Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Bowl Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, yesterday, as I think we more or less foresaw, Keir Starmer suggested that the United Kingdom would, in September, join France in recognizing the state of Palestine. Now, unlike French President Macron last week, who stated unequivocally that France would announce that it's recognizing Palestine. Britain declared, well, it might if Israel fails to fulfill certain conditions, which is a very strange presentation. I mean, either recognizing the state of Palestine is the right thing to do,
Yeah.
or it's to be treated as a kind of a punishment for Israel if it doesn't fulfill certain conditions.
So Palestinians have an inalienable right to statehood to a state, but
Right.
under equivocation. I mean,
Exactly. So it was a very it's a very odd
he's a very
announcement.
odd guy.
It's
He's
a very,
very
yeah,
odd.
very odd announcement. Nonetheless, if this does go ahead, and Britain does recognize the state of Israel, that does mean that at the least 4 out of 5 of the permanent members of the UN Security Council will have recognized Palestine. Interestingly enough, if it does go ahead, only 2 out of the G7 will have recognized the state of Palestine. Britain, of course, it has a particular role here because, of course, Britain was the place where A.J. Balfour famously made
Yeah,
his
the original
declaration.
sin, the
Exactly, the
original
Balfour
sin, everyone.
Declaration. Britain acquired the mandate under the League of Nations. And of course, within the League of Nations, within that mandate was the Balfour Declaration. So that was part of the mandate that it had to fulfill the Balfour Declaration, which is to create a Jewish national home. But it couldn't come at the expense of the rights of the people who were living in Palestine. So that never came. But nonetheless, Britain had the mandate, and when he gave up the mandate, then of course the modern Middle East was born. So it does have a certain resonance because Britain does have a much greater responsibility for Palestine than France did. But let's take a look first at the statement of Keir Starmer, and here we have this is from Downing Street, and here we have.
It's a pity, George, you aren't showing the video because Summer, he stutters, he stammers, he can't complete a sentence. He speaks worse than Trump. I mean,
Oh, he does speak worse than Trump.
and this was profiled all through British media over the last news cycle. Is that what the hell is this guy saying? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Right, but I find it very hard to listen to him.
Well, you don't learn anything, that's
But
for
you don't
sure.
know, but he's a very dreary presenter, and it's very disheartening to sit listening to him. It's disheartening and depressing and boring to have to listen to Starmer speak. Anyway, he says that we must do all we can to end the current suffering and change the situation on the ground. We demand an immediate ceasefire to stop the slaughter, that the UN be allowed to send humanitarian assistance into Gaza on a continuing basis to prevent starvation, and the immediate release of the hostages. And then we also need a comprehensive plan to end the misery and to get to a long-term settlement. We are committed to working together with our international partners to develop a credible peace plan for the next phase in Gaza that establishes transitional governance and security arrangements and ensures the delivery of humanitarian aid at the necessary scale. Now, the strange thing is that he was talking about the peace plan when he was with Trump at Turnberry. Um, but Trump never really echoed him. Yeah, yeah, we're working on this peace plan. So he said, yeah, yeah, we're working on the peace plan. But Trump said nothing. He didn't say, yeah, absolutely. We're already drafting, the 10-point peace plan. There was nothing at all. Starmer said, yeah, yeah, we're absolutely working on this peace plan. No, no confirmation from
Well,
the Americans.
I would even go further. Trump was, you could see in his facial expression, aren't you finished yet? I mean, Trump didn't need, he heard it, but he wasn't listening.
Right, exactly. And then he says, so this is there he says, develop a credible peace plan for the next phase in Gaza that establishes transitional governance and security arrangements. Um, this was exactly what was supposed to happen under the ceasefire agreement that was embarked upon in January. And of course, we never really got beyond phase one.
Well,
And
I'm sure in here, Georgia, the prime minister says if Israel doesn't start moving in the direction, we will cut off all trade. He said that, right? Was there a
no, there was
threat here? Is there any, threat here?
no,
None.
no, there is none.
None.
There's none.
I'm sorry, transitional governance. I mean, how many administrations do you want to go back, George? I
Right,
mean, this is just it's exasperating, okay? I mean, these are words of concern. We're very concerned, okay?
right,
Not
right.
much
Yeah,
more.
yeah. Um, that I mean, of course, whether this leads to anything, probably not. However, it does add weight, as I say. If you've got 4 out of 5 of the
Okay,
permanent
yeah,
members recognizing Palestine, that adds weight. Plus, you've got
yes,
almost the
yes.
entire United Nations membership that recognizes the state of Palestine. Also, if you've got Britain and France on board, that's going to have an effect, a domino effect in Europe. I mean, already there are some European countries that recognize Palestine, like Slovenia, Spain, but this will have an effect on others. I mean, I think
Sure.
yeah, Italy, um,
Well, and then maybe the EU overall.
EU overall. And then, of course, the pressure will build on Germany. And of course, Germany doesn't want to do it, absolutely doesn't want to do it. However, Germany doesn't like to be
I
isolated.
think exactly.
And this
George
will
is
add a certain pressure on Germany. Well, it's got to fall in with the with the others.
yeah, because having all my adult life visited Europe, almost the entire continent. The Germans, more than anyone else, than any other European, refer to themselves as Europeans.
Right.
Okay, French people never say we're European. The
No.
Spaniards, the Italians, none of them do that. Okay,
Right.
I'm Italian. Okay, I'm not. But the Germans, it's like Germany's the ugly sister in the family and never wants to be looked at. And if it withholds recognition, its ugliness is going to be apparent to all. Okay,
That's right.
you're absolutely right. Germany doesn't like to be
No.
singled out,
Absolutely.
particularly on this issue. Come on.
Exactly. So I think the pressure is going to build on Germany to get with the program. Hungary probably will stay out. I mean, Hungary just doesn't care. They'll be the sort of the minority, and they'll say, okay, fine, everyone else can recognize it, Palestine. We won't. But that's just be one more issue on which Hungary is out on its own in Europe. But ultimately, just Hungary doesn't have that weight. I mean, it's just it's then it's a small country, so I don't think it matters very much. Germany, I think, is a very different issue. Anyway, so we have the transitional governance, security arrangements, and ensure the delivery of humanitarian aid. And it says this must be accompanied by the withdrawal of Israeli forces and the removal of Hamas leadership from Gaza as key steps toward a negotiated two-state solution. We welcome the
Okay,
steps.
but George, I mean, it's been reported in the last news cycle that we need more confirmation of this. But I'm sorry, Smoltrus's demand to stay in the government is the annexation of
Yeah,
Gaza. And apparently the United States has already signed off on this here. So this is the unreality.
That part I don't believe. I don't believe
That's what I
Yeah,
prefaced it very, very clearly. We need more confirmation and more
exactly.
sources.
Yeah,
Okay. I
I'm
did
sure
preface it.
Smotrich does believe this, and I'm
Well,
sure
he
Smot.
may believe this,
Yeah.
and there may have been consultation. Well, certainly some kind of consultation with the United States. Now, is are they in lockstep on this? That remains unclear. I've only read two reports on it, and I think they source the same people. So let's, as usual, we keep a step back.
I think so.
My point in bringing it up is at the same time Starmer is talking like this, apparently with maybe good reason, they're already talking, the Israelis are talking about the annexation of Gaza. That's why I call this the unreality of it all.
Right. Well, except that I think Smotrich is he's just he's so wild and so extreme. He,
Yeah, but he keeps the
however,
government together. He keeps
yes,
it
but he's
together.
there essentially. Yeah, he keeps this together. However, there's still a question. Even if Smotrich leaves, Netanyahu's government will survive. The opposition isn't going to press for the downfall as long as Netanyahu makes some steps towards towards some kind of a
Well,
ceasefire and a deal. So they won't. If so, Smotrich can walk out, and that won't necessarily mean the fall of the government.
nonetheless, and I don't focus so much on governments. Okay, this is a policy that is, there's a consensus in Israel about it. I mean, I think that people are looking for differences where they don't really exist. My point in bringing it up is that these are demands made of Israel. Israel will turn around and say, "Well, we've already annexed it." So, I mean, there, maybe we can have a truncated Gaza. I just don't see how Israel is going to go along with it. They've turned their back on the global community on everything. Why are they going to change? I don't see it. As Lane, as you've pointed out, as long as the United States is there, they will continue down this path. They will not care what the Europeans have to say. Certainly, it's a PR disaster for them, but they're willing to accept that. Okay, they're willing to be an international outlaw. As long as they have someone in the White House and the U.S. Congress, they will continue down this path. The reason why I think this is, I'm glad you wanted to do this because it shows the change of position, or at least rhetorically, in important countries in the West. But it remains to be seen if it'll have any material impact on what Israel does or doesn't do.
Well, that does, of course, it remains to be seen. I have my doubts that that Israel can do any of those things that Smotrich would like. First of all, Israel doesn't have the capability to do those things. Israel, small country, it does not like hand-to-hand combat. It doesn't like to take risks. It doesn't like anything that would lead to serious Israeli casualties, which is what you would have to. Israel would incur massive, massive casualties if it tried to move into Gaza and start moving
Well,
people out by the hundreds of thousands. I think
if
Israel
they're
doesn't have
start
it. And we've seen, what does Israel do? Israel pummels and pummels and pummels with bombs because it doesn't want to incur any casualties. So that's why I just, a lot of big talk, but I don't think Israel has the capability of doing this.
well, I mean, you can still annex it and still have Palestinians there.
Yeah,
Okay, I mean,
okay,
yeah, well,
okay.
and I mean, I don't want to go over territory of the last time we spoke, but I mean, if people are starving to death, they have a lot more less resistance. But anyway.
Yeah, right. Um, anyway, so it says we welcome the steps announced by President Abbas, and these should be the basis of a comprehensive reform of the Palestinian authorities.
Oh yeah.
Then he says, we have long been committed to recognizing a state of Palestine. And then, of course, the question arises, well, why have you not done so? I mean, if you've been committed to doing something, why haven't you done this? Um, as our election manifesto said, Palestinian statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people. It is not in the gift of any neighbor, and it is also essential to the long-term security of Israel. We are committed to recognizing a Palestinian state as a contribution to a renewed peace process, which results in a two-state solution with a safe and secure Israel along a viable and sovereign Palestinian state.
George, you and I have been over this ground so many times that we could have written that ourselves in our sleep.
Yes.
Yes. There's no originality here,
No, there's
folks.
not. There isn't. Um, but I mean, as I said earlier, I think the historic significance that is Great Britain, and this
Well,
is
I mean, there are people in Great Britain want to start washing their hands of this.
well, yeah,
Okay,
but
it's just like,
I mean, it's like
whoa, it's gotten to this point right now. We're on the record. We're on the record. We said this at the end of July in 2025. We were supporting this. Okay, I don't. I think that is something that is very cogent right now. Very.
overwhelmingly among the British people, the polls show
A
overwhelming
good
support.
point, George. I mean, here's a courage. Oh, so this is just a profile in courage, isn't it? I mean, this is long-standing. I think you already saw the Gallup poll that came out in the last news cycle. I mean, and it's something you spent part of your life in the UK and in the United States. And I don't have to tell you about the Hasbra Israeli propaganda that is just thrown at the American public 24/7 for decades. And Israel is so underwater right now. Okay. So here we go. We have European leaders. I think we support the two-state solution. I mean, my goodness, that's a leading from behind, isn't it?
Well, that's right, but that's a very important change. It's a change that's taken place in my lifetime. I remember the 1970s, early 1970s.
Oh,
People overwhelmingly hated the PLO. PLO, that's a terrorist organization. They're terrorists. These are terrorists. People, with
for
sites.
someone my generation, say PLO, and you see the planes blowing up.
Exactly.
That's what
Planes
you.
blowing up, the Munich Olympics,
Yep.
the Israeli athletes. And at that time, there was a lot of sympathy for Israel. And the people who did advocate on behalf of the Palestinians, and there were a minority, they were just often just ridiculed. These are wild
Yep.
extremists. No one listened to them. Somebody would talk about the Palestinian refugee problem. You'd say, "Oh, shut up. We don't want to hear about that." Um, this is a change. I mean, that this is now an overwhelming majority of the British people support a statehood for the Palestinians. So that propaganda machine, which is I think Norman Finkelstein is talking about how good they are, how brilliant Israel is at this propaganda. That's failed. They're not good at this anymore. I mean, they're still, of course, churning out anti-Semitism, all lies,
Well,
all
you
that.
saw what Netanyahu had to say to this. I don't know what. It's a woman, a congregation headed by a woman that Trump is going to appoint as some kind of interfaith czar. I don't know.
Right,
Complete lunatic.
right,
Okay. And
right.
then Netanyahu said, "There's no one starving there. There's food all over the place." I mean, I don't know if you saw the clip. I mean, it just
Uh,
the unreality of it all.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
I mean, it's one of the things, being a person in the media for a long time. I used to do many, many programs, and we've had Israelis on, and I have to say, to be really honest, they lie. They lie a lot.
Right.
Okay. And again, going back because I don't want to forget it, but we had the angry Arab that was invented in the 1970s. Okay, and then there would be people that would advocate for the Palestinians. But George, you remember it would be guy with a head with a beard, Israel, and everyone said, "Yeah, look, these guys are nuts. These guys are crazy."
Right. Those.
And when they started getting like our good friend Ramzi Baroud. And that was the change that the Palestinian side. You need to be reasonable and calm because you have a solid case, a righteous case, and just present it. And it was the Israelis that turned into the more rabid ones.
Right. No,
Okay.
that's right. And that's a very interesting. I mean, and that's really where the Israeli propaganda machine um, first began the disintegration was in the mid 1970s, 1977, when Menachem Begin won the election. The Likud won that election. So up until then, you had Labor, and they were pretty terrible people. But these was the Israeli Labor Party. They were the they were really brutal in the way they essentially created that state of Israel and all the killings of the Palestinians in 1948, but they were seen to be kind of socialist, kind of liberal, and people liked them. There was a great fondness for Golda Meir and Moshe Dayan. Oh yeah, these are good guys. These are people like us. They're really. We Abba Eban. The guy who was Israel's representative at the United Nations, and he spoke very good English. Like an Englishman. And but then when Menachem Begin won that election, they said people would say, that guy Menachem Begin, he was a member of all the most extreme organized the Irgun Tzar that these are terrorist organizations. They were the people who blew up the King David Hotel. They were the people who killed. I don't know how many British people were killed at the bombing of the King David Hotel. So Menachem Begin was in that. And from then on, it became harder and harder to present Israel as somehow, moderate, reasonable, kind of civilized, Western European. They made a great effort to do it. I mean, you have to credit the Israeli propaganda to present Menachem Begin as somehow reasonable and moderate. Itzhak Shamir, who succeeded Begin, he was a member of the Stern Gang, also horrifically terrorist assassinations and everything. But it's got harder and harder to present
Well, I
the
mean,
Arabs as
Menachem
fanatics and
Begin,
Israel as kind of Western.
yeah, but that's a very interesting turning point because Menachem Begin had as much charisma as a rock.
No,
Okay,
no,
and he was a very, very unpleasant person.
very,
Okay,
yeah,
I mean, it's one of these odd cases when you a successful politician that has no interest in people at all, just lacking in all empathy whatsoever. I mean, remember during the Camp David days with Anwar Sadat. Sadat was pretty urbane, smoking his pipe, and
yeah, yeah,
he would, even when it was informal, he was kind of formal. And
yeah,
Menachem Begin had his open shirt,
yeah,
he was sweating, he
right.
hated. He wrote in his memoirs. He said that it was like being in a prison camp, being at Camp David. I mean, just. And had nothing good to say about
No, no,
anyone.
no, no, no.
He was very open about it. Okay, that's why people that's why Benjamin Netanyahu has been so effective with Western audiences because is he's probably one of the most evil people that have ever crawled the earth, but he has political style and he is good at it.
Right. Right. No, that's right. He spent a lot of time in the United States, so and he's always had an understanding for the American political scene. Now, in the case of Begin and Shamir, they were haters. They not only hated the Arabs, that's a given that they hated them, but they hated the British, and and they, to them, even the British were even worse than the Arabs. They thought because the British just simply weren't kowtowing to them. And even for the Americans, they had contempt for the Americans, but they lacked the smoothness and polish of Netanyahu. The English wasn't anything like as good as Netanyahu's English. Shamir's English was terrible. And they were just whenever they spoke, they were before the cameras. They came across as fanatics. And it's funny when you say about the Camp David, Jimmy Carter and Brzezinski, they couldn't stand Begin. They hated being in his presence. Absolutely loathed just being in one room with him. They couldn't wait to be in a one room with Sadat. They thought, oh, he's so entertaining, charming, likable, but with Begin, it was just awful. It was torment to have to deal with him. And so, but still, the propaganda machine, churned on, and particularly when they talk about the terrorists, the terrorists. We must crush the terrorists. Anything You can bloody talk about terrorism. You people, Bacon and Shamir, you were terrorists. You were the worst terrorists. I mean, you were assassinating people all over the place. You were committing mass
Who
slaughter.
was I'm gonna get they assassinated a high commissioner
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
that's right, the Bernadotte, Count Bernadotte.
Yeah, but he hadn't been there very long.
No, 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 that's right.
He just arrived and
Yeah,
they got out.
that's right. His great sin was that he believed in a partition. He thought that there should be a partition of Palestine. They didn't want any kind of partition. And but yeah. So the assassination was a regular thing with them. And of course, there was the Deir Yassin massacre. Women and children were killed there. And then they became prime ministers of Israel talking about the terrorists. Anyway, so
And
here's
now we have a British prime minister talking about creating states. I mean, you can't make this up. I mean,
so here's Starmer. Hamas are a terrorist organization responsible for over the seventh atrocities. They must never be rewarded. We have been unequivocal in our condemnation of those evil attacks and our support for the right of the State of Israel to self-defense. Hamas must immediately release all the hostages, sign up to an immediate ceasefire, accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza, and commit to disarmament. Now, I thought that was interesting, that formulation, commit to disarmament. So that isn't the position of the U.S. is saying they must disarm immediately. They say commit to disarmament. So it doesn't say, well, right, you must lay down your arms right away and surrender. So they commit to disarmament. So that sounds more like a long-term project of disarmament. I mean, they're not just going to give up their arms just like that. So I thought it's kind of an interesting that he uses that term,
well, I
commit
mean,
to disarmament.
also we need to kind of nail down a chronology here. All right, let's just, as a given, this is what Hamas should do. Shouldn't the Israelis completely withdraw from Gaza?
Right.
Shouldn't the Israelis open up Gaza to UN directed aid relief? I mean, what are we
To
going
be
to do
fair, I mean that he is saying that in the statement that they should do that. They should absolutely withdraw. He said
first?
that earlier. He said they should withdraw from Gaza and open it up to UN relief. Um, uh, so he at least says that. I mean, the Americans don't say that, but he says that. Um, and then anyway, we are determined to protect the viability of the two-state solution, and so we will recognize the state of Palestine in September before the UN General Assembly, unless. Unless I thought, oh great, so we're going to do it unless. So maybe we won't unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza and commits to a long-term sustainable peace. Okay, so Israel says, yeah, we're committed to a long-term sustainable peace. Yeah, count us in. Okay, including through allowing the UN to restart without delay the supply of humanitarian support to the people of Gaza to end starvation, agreeing to a ceasefire, and making clear there will be no annexations in the West Bank. That's interesting. He throws that one in about the annexations in the West Bank. Now that's an issue. So I mean, what does Israel say? Does Israel say, okay, yeah, we've taken substantive steps. You know, we're down for that. Now they're saying, well, it's all the fault of the UN. I mean, we're allowing UN to go in. I mean, it's all their fault that they're not distributing food. Isn't that what Israel would say and say, yeah, so we fulfilled your demands. Um, and so I mean, I don't know exactly how does Starmer measure that Israel has fulfilled his demands or has failed to fulfill his demands.
Well, I mean, the Israelis say, "Well, we've fulfilled the demands." I mean, they'll
That's what
just say
yeah, I think so.
it. That's
Yeah, I think so too. Uh,
and
Yeah.
I would say, before this is all said and done, the West Bank will be annexed by Israel. Again, at the risk of sounding like a broken
Not
record.
all of it. I think the settlement, the big settlements there, I think all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, okay, right. Well, land with no water. Okay,
Right.
fine. Okay.
Right.
Um, this is they see this as an opportunity, all of this, and it may not come again. So they're going to grab as much as they possibly can. And so, George, we've been over this before. Yes, annexation of the West Bank. In for the most part, it will be. George is right. There'll be a few places, left that nobody wants, and say we'll give that to the Palestinians, okay? With the hope that they will leave because there are no resources. They can't grow anything there. There's no water there, and of course, they're not going to get outside aid. So before this is all said and done, I think this is going to happen.
Um, Now, he says, making clear there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Now, the, so if there's no, I mean, I'm assuming, all right, there'll be no annexations before September. So that means Starmer's off the hook. He doesn't have to recognize Palestine. Well,
Yeah,
it hasn't happened yet. They haven't
yeah.
annexed
I
the
mean,
West Bank yet.
again, it's how you parse the words here. When I'm sure when the term West Bank is mentioned, you envision it in your mind, okay? That from the very thin part where Israel meets the Mediterranean all the way to Jordan and Jordan River, okay? That's almost all been colonized anyway. So when with the Israelis who say we're just going to annex the
Right,
settlements
right.
and the settlements, and then a little buffer around each.
Right,
So not only big settlements, then a buffer.
right,
And we've only annexed the settlements. I
right,
mean, these are Israelis,
right,
okay?
right, right.
We
Yeah, no,
haven't annexed the West Bank. You see what I'm saying?
but they may say that Starmer's not going to accept that. I don't think anyone's going. I don't think anyone in
Oh,
the
I
world
don't
is
know.
going to accept that.
I have
Maybe
no
the
hope for
Americans will, but no one will say, "Oh, well,
I
that's
have
okay."
no hope for these people.
I mean, look, Resolution 242 was also drafted by the British. It's the British. So the British stated that this was occupied territory, that Israel has to give up this occupied territory. So that occupied territory comprises the entirety of the West Bank, drafted by the British, Lord Caradon, who's
Paradise.
Hugh Foot, who was the brother of former UK Labour leader Michael Foot. There was he was the head of the UK mission at the UN. So he drafted that resolution, contrary to the claims of Alan Dershowitz, that Alan Dershowitz, who drafted the resolution to
Everybody checked the debate with Dershowitz and Norman
Norman
Finkelstein
Finkelstein.
on Democracy Now! Many years
That's
ago.
right, exactly. The funny thing was because Dershowitz kind of confused Lord Caradon with Lord Carrington, which they were very different people. Anyway, um, anyway, Starmer goes on. We will make an assessment ahead of the General Assembly on how far the parties have met these steps. Oh, an assessment. That would be exciting. No one side will have a veto on recognition through their actions or inactions. Um,
Wait, the reason why he's saying this, everyone, is because Israel has held a claim to have a veto over it, over any kind of
right,
settlement here.
right. Um, but the recognition by itself will not change the situation on the ground. Hmm.
Oh, 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 okay.
Um, we are therefore taking additional immediate steps to alleviate the humanitarian situation, including airdrops of humanitarian supplies along with Jordan, and getting injured children out of Gaza and into British hospitals, alongside pressing strongly for UN deliveries of humanitarian assistance to region.
I think it's interesting. I really hate when children are thrown into political maneuvering here. But I think any children that are allowed to leave Gaza, Israel will say, sure, why not? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You want the children? We'll have as many as you want. That's how cynical this is.
yeah, no,
Okay.
I absolutely, absolutely, and I think They will probably say no. I think the Palestinians will say no. We're not going to move out. You come here. You bring your hospitals and your
Yeah,
medical
bring your
stuff.
mash unit. Bring your
Exactly.
mash
Bring
unit.
them here because once anyone leaves, they're never
Mhm.
coming back. That's it. So absolutely. Um, anyway, and governance, security, and so on. And then here we have Benjamin Netanyahu who
Oh,
responded.
God. Here we go.
At least we're spared having to listen to his voice.
Yes.
Starmer rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism and punishes its victims. A jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. So it's interesting. He talks this complete drivel. Um, how are you rewarding Hamas? I mean, whenever they say these things, he said, Starmer said explicitly, and everyone says this: Hamas is to play no role in the governance of Gaza. Everyone says it. Hamas will play no role. So how are you rewarding Hamas? And then a jihadist state on Israel's border will threaten Britain tomorrow. Why would he do that? Appeasement. Always good to bring in appeasement. Neville Chamberlain. Appeasement toward jihadist terrorists always fails. It will fail you too. It will not happen. So that kind of confirms your it will not happen.
Apologies to the speechwriter. It didn't fly. Okay, but it was. We'll put it in the archive. Okay.
That's right. Now, Trump was on aboard Air Force One, and then he was asked about this recognition. He said, "Yeah, you just talked to Sir Keir. Did he mention that he intended to do this?" Let's take a look. Okay, this is always a problem.
That we asked about updates on Gaza. Sir Keir Starmer has just announced the UK will recognise Palestinian sovereignty in September if Israel does not commit to a ceasefire, ease the suffering in Gaza, and commit to a long-term solution that will deliver the two-state solution in the Middle East. Did you know that was coming? No, we never discussed it. Surprisingly, it was never really discussed. Maybe a little bit at the news conference, but he was sort of discussing it with you. We never did discuss it, and we have no view on that. We're going to get a lot of money to the area so they can get some food. He's going to also. I think the European Union is going to put up money too for food, and hopefully it's going to be properly distributed, and it will be. I think it will be. We have some pretty good response on people for the distribution of the food. We want to take it one thing at a time. They need food, and they need people to be able to get them the food. But to follow up on that, I mean, is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution? Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And
So there he is. We're rewarding. So he's asked, what about putting some pressure on Israel? Well, of course, if you put pressure on Israel, then you are rewarding Hamas.
It's interesting. In never in the discourse are the Palestinian people rewarded. You
No,
know,
no, no, no.
they're always last in line.
Right,
Okay.
right. No, that's right, and that's why essentially well, I mean, these people, these fanatics, some people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, they say, well, they're all terrorists.
Yeah.
Even a baby, a newborn baby, is a terrorist. I mean, it's a terrorist in the making. And this guy, Randy Fine,
Oh,
um,
oh my God.
who, the one with the "Let Them Starve."
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, because Randy Fine, is anyone has seen him, I mean, the man is obese. I mean, just grotesquely obese. So when he says "Let them starve," I mean, he looks like he hasn't missed too many meals during his
Yeah.
life.
Speaking of meals, there was on Israeli television. I think it was I-12. The Israelis obviously are talking about all of these things all of the time, but because it's in Hebrew, it doesn't always, very rarely does it make it into the Anglosphere.
Right.
But there was this character. I don't want to designate him or anything, but they were showing pictures of starvation, and then with some very large Palestinians. And then, well, that woman doesn't look like she's missed a meal. She looks all just fine. And then, well, maybe she ate her own children. He said this on Israeli television. You know, they they're eating their own children. I mean, this is so macabre. It's just beyond. It's incomprehensible.
Right.
So, and this Andy Fine. I mean, George is right. I mean, when he's taking the elevator in Congress, he's alone because no one else fits.
But it is interesting though, and that is a reflection on how public opinion has changed in the United States on Israel. He barely won in a very red district. He barely got across the finish line, and it looked indeed before that special election that he might lose. I mean, it was quite shocking that the Republicans really had to scramble because they were actually on the brink of losing. So he was not at all a popular candidate. I mean, it's like if you essentially have waving the Star of David rather than the Stars and Stripes. I mean, Americans kind of think, hey, what this is, what kind of a what kind of a politician are you? What kind of a representative are you? Anyway, here's Trump.
That camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are, but I am not in that camp. Because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas. And I'm not about to do that.
Mr. President, you mentioned setting up food centers. When can we expect to see
Very
those
soon.
food centers?
Yeah, very soon. So we sent $60 million. It's a lot of money for food, a lot of money that can take care of people for a long time. And we want to make sure it's being spent properly. And part of the spending is the distribution. You know, if you know, a lot of money's been sent by other countries, but nothing compared to us. But a lot of things have been stolen. They send money, they send food, and Hamas steals it. So it's a tricky little game, but we're going to make sure we have some very good people. They're going to be watching it.
Who's going to be running those food centers for you, and what kind of oversight?
Well, we're going to be dealing with Israel, and we think they can do a good job of it.
Did you hear what he said?
I didn't know.
They want to do it.
Did you hear what he said?
No.
He said, who's going to run these food centers? That's what she asked him, and he said, well, we're dealing with Israel. You know, they're going to run the food centers. Let's watch that again.
They can do a good job.
Go back a bit.
Food centers for you, and what kind of oversight?
Well, we're going to be dealing with Israel, and we think they can do a good job of it. And they want to do it.
Monitoring the food centers?
No, they want to do it. The food centers, yeah. They want to preside over the.
Even the sort of journalist was a kind of a little bit surprised. Is that they're going to run the food centers?
We sent money, and I want to make sure the money is spent wisely and is spent judiciously, and that food is distributed in a proper manner. And he wants to do it.
So the Israelis are going to run these food centers. I mean, that's a new one. I mean, this is going beyond even getting the Gaza. Maybe that's what he means, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation under Israeli auspices. But how on earth? No one's going to accept that. No one is going to accept anything that somehow Israel is going to run these food centers.
George, it's gotten to a point, listening to Trump is every single time now, it ends up being an exercise in what he doesn't know and what he has been, misinformation fed to him. Donald Trump, this is on the front page of the New York Times. I know you don't like it. I mean, why you do interviews with them is a mystery to me. But I mean, it's on when the New York Times is telling you this,
Right.
one of the most pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist publications in history, and when they're saying reporting what Israeli generals say, well, Hamas isn't stealing it. I mean, you have to wonder. Now this is just an exercise in how out of touch are you, Mr. Trump?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, how out of touch are you? Because this is, this is, Trump's position, and to a certain extent, this is already Biden's position, is so out of step with the rest of the world, and out of step with your would-be allies. And so this is the picture of the United States. Look, even George W. Bush kind of committed himself to a two-state solution. Even he, under his auspices in 2008, they came up with the Olmert plan. Uh, didn't materialize, as always. Israel kind of always sabotages it. But at least even George W. Bush moved towards something and tried to negotiate something, with the Israeli Prime Minister Olmert. But that's George W. Bush, and here he's just simply, Israel is going to distribute the food. I mean, United Nations will absolutely say, well, we're going to have nothing to do with this. No international organization is going to cooperate if Israel is going to be overseeing the distribution of the food.
When I'm not like you and Max Blumenthal. I can't come up with names as fast as you guys do. But what was the Israeli minister saying? We're going to put Gaza on a diet. Yeah, on a diet.
Yes, yes. We'd like to put, how about Randy Fine on a diet? Yeah. Anyway, let's see if we can catch Tammy Bruce, what she said.
Oh God.
I know my colleague brought it up, but considering they're using it as leverage to try to stop some of the starvation that President Trump himself said he's concerned about taking place in Gaza.
Well, I think President Rubio's statement and my statement that I issued regarding the conference, the two-state solution, the fact of the matter is his remarks also when President Macron of France also did something similar in this regard, that this is a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th, that it rewards Hamas, and it harms the ability to stop this framework from, it allows it to continue. It gives one group hope, and that's Hamas. It is a rewarding of that kind of behavior, that if you wait long enough, if you don't cooperate, if in any other normal environment where someone was so utterly defeated, they would surrender. In this case, that just does not occur. And part of it is,
Well, maybe they haven't been utterly defeated. That could be an explanation. I mean,
Well, I mean, considering the overwhelming, and I really stress overwhelming force that Israel has in this conflict, one could make an argument, and others have, some have, that Israel has been defeated in this conflict. Okay, I mean, look at her; she's so desperate. I mean, does she have like a comfort dog right next to her? I mean, she's terrified.
but as she's talking this gibberish about frameworks,
What
like,
is the framework?
what framework? I mean,
What framework?
exactly. She's sort of, talking this kind of word salad, but that's how she used to be at Fox.
That's true.
Yeah, it was
True.
always a kind of a word salad. When she was on with Sean Hannity, you had to think, what the hell did she just say? Well, I mean, because none of it means anything. It's like she's just running out the clock by sort of filling the silence with
Yeah, it was
meaningless
always,
words.
when I left the left, when I abandoned the
I didn't
left, when
leave
the
the
left
left. The left
abandoned
left
me,
me. Yeah.
and a lesbian conservative. I mean, there was always those two
That's it,
things.
exactly. As a
That's it.
lesbian conservative, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. I'm a feminist and a lesbian. Oh, everybody has to be the silent. Um, but let's just listen a little more for her groping for words.
because of perhaps the hope that they receive on how long the suffering lasts, how much that pushes the world to acquiesce to their arguments. And that is, there's one group that benefits from the images and the reality of the horribleness, and that's Hamas. And so there's a reason why they don't cooperate and stop. And this adds one more thing onto it that adds into their apparent posture that this is a winning thing to do. Clearly, we are the opposite mind, and that I think we can say in general about that issue.
So that was what she said. But there was a reporter who pressed her. Let's just find this where.
About, and we're going to be moving forward. No doubt, we'll have some additional information for you in perhaps the coming days. Yes, ma'am.
Return to your statement at the top. Could you explain why talking about Palestinian statehood or Palestinian future in Gaza rewards Hamas or is a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th? And I'm asking, given that none of the parties involved, to my knowledge, who are involved in these discussions or have plans to recognize statehood, have said anything about wanting Hamas to be in power. It seems like, according to the United States, according to Israel, and obviously as well as all these other folks involved in these conversations now at the UN, no one has expressed a desire to have Hamas in power. So how does it reward?
Well, I think that it's very often, not most often, actions speak louder than words. And our argument is that there are certain actions you can take that reward in the midst of the defense of a country after a horrific atrocity implemented on October 7th. And the end result is, create a two-state solution, solve this problem. When in fact, the problem was mass murder and just an indescribably obscene environment. And then the continuation of the terrorism of the people of Gaza, the first victims of Hamas. Still, the nature of living in that environment, the hostages that remain held, the weapons that remain held, and a refusal. We had a ceasefire early on. We had a ceasefire on October 7th. We had a ceasefire early on. They broke that. And there is a point where you don't find ways to placate or reward the people that have done such horrible things to humanity. The actions of what is being suggested, and I think we've made clear here, do just that. And it is, I think everyone deserves better. Certainly first the Gazan people, but certainly the world itself.
Now, no, basically, she hasn't in any way answered the question that the reporter asked, which is, how is this a rewarding Hamas? Everybody has said that Hamas is to have no role in any future government in Gaza. So why are you saying that this is going to reward Hamas? And then she goes off on this free flow stream of consciousness ramble. It's like October the 7th, October the 7th, October the 7th. It's like, you just keep mindlessly repeating that.
Yeah, when every day is October 7th
every day,
in Gaza.
exactly. And they said, oh, well, she said, oh, well, it's very easy to say two-state solution. Yeah, that's been your official policy. So, it's
George, who do you think
to say that's been the U.S. official policy.
Who's writing this for her? I mean, and she's a nitwit, everyone. I mean, George and I'm very familiar with her past years media career. I mean, she never talked about any of these things that I remember anyway. She's not a quick study, obviously, and she's obviously just repeating she goes right, rewarding Hamas, rewarding Hamas. You can condemn Hamas, okay? She's not part of the conversation. I just wonder who is touring her on these things, because she's obviously looking. She has an iPad in front of her, and she's hitting tabs.
Right.
And it was so I'm sure, question about two-state solution. She's hitting the tab and she's looking at it. Okay.
Right. Yes, yes. Um, I'm sure. I think, um, at the time I wasn't so aware of Tammy Bruce. I think way during the Gulf War II, in the sort of George W. Bush era, I think she was a fanatic on these issues, and then she kind of
Okay.
segued into all these social and cultural things. So I think that was a little bit before. I wasn't really following that, but she was, I think, then
Okay. Well, I
a
mean,
fanatic.
let's say from like 2015 all the way up
Right.
to Tucker's departure.
Right.
She only spoke about social
Yeah,
issues in the
social
United.
cultural issues. Yeah, yeah. And I guess Trump, whose entire kind of intellectual diet comprises watching Fox News. That's where he just that's where he gets his bearings from. I mean, it's like everyone who's joined his administration, they're all from Fox News. I mean, I think it's that's where he that's pretty much his only source on information, and it is reflected even when he talks about whether it's the Middle East or whether it's Ukraine. He really doesn't know any more than these kind of bumper sticker slogans that you get from watching Sean Hannity and Mark Levin. And so that's it, kind of a little shocking.
Well, I mean, the reason why I ask is because, maybe I'm getting muddled here, but I can remember dealing with Israel Palestine from let's go from Clinton's years all the way up to the present. I mean, you would always look to the administration of, what the new thinking
Right,
is, what a new possibility is,
right,
new partners, the Qataris, the Egyptian. This White House is completely the opposite,
right.
is that they're testing them. The story is evolving. It's evolving dramatically, but the administration is unmoved. Okay, it takes a long time for them to acknowledge. I mean, this, like, babies in a microwave. I thought we gave up on that a long
Right,
time ago.
and that the Hamas was murdering and raping at the same time. So again, all of that has been debunked by Israeli sources, by Haaretz. Haaretz said that the story about the mass rapes was a hoax. So this is Israeli sources, and yet there she is repeating this. Now, today in New York City, the United Nations is holding a conference, a global conference on a two-state solution. Now, it was supposed to be held in June. It was postponed. It was also supposed to be chaired by Emmanuel Macron and Mohammed bin Salman. So it's a French-Saudi co-chairmanship. However, it's been downgraded to foreign minister level. So all the foreign ministers are there, including the French foreign minister, a very distinguished person whose name, is always very hard to remember.
Doesn't matter.
And David Lammy
Okay.
is there. And needless to say, everybody's there with the exception of the United States and Israel. Hasn't got much coverage in the media, but there have been a few kind of wire stories about this conference. And here we have this Euro News. The European Union and the Arab League expressed support for a 7-page document agreed at the United Nations conference, which calls for a two-state solution and the end of Hamas rule. The European Union and the Arab League, as well as several other countries, including Britain and Canada, voiced their commitment to revive the two-state solution in a bid to end Israel's devastating war on Gaza. High-level representatives gathered in New York on Monday at an international conference co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia. And of course, Israel has already denounced this, clown show. It's a clown show. The UN conference was postponed from June and scaled down from world leaders to ministers, established 8 high-level working groups. Ooh. Imagine these working groups, they're drafting these detailed plans, none of which are the slightest
Oh,
prospect
they're just going to go to Wikipedia and cut and paste. I mean, what else is there to be said, George?
right. Yes. Um, yes, a broad range of topics. Yes. With regard to the two-state solution, 7-page declaration called the New York Declaration, which sets out a phased plan that urges countries to recognize the state of Palestine, calls for disarmament of Hamas, and envisions the Palestinian Authority governing. In the context of ending
Well,
the
it's very interesting here. I mean, the Palestinian Authority has been mentioned again. It disappears from view for years and years at a time, and then when they need it, they resurrect it. Okay. Has anybody asked anybody in Gaza if they want to be ruled by the PA? No, no one.
But I don't think the Palestinian Authority particularly wants to rule either. If essentially they're just going to be the enforcement arm of the IDF, and they don't need the headache.
Yeah, the capos. Yeah.
That's right. Um, In the context of ending the war in Gaza, Hamas must end its rule in Gaza, hand over its weapons to the Palestinian Authority with international engagement or support in line with the objective of a sovereign, independent Palestinian state. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's that the way the Palestinian Authority is always just suddenly it's trotted out. Mohammed Abbas. I don't even know how old he is. I mean, he's been sort of
Gee.
86
He,
for a
yeah.
long time now. He's been 86. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
He remembers the partition.
I think so. Um, and the declaration also supports the deployment of a temporary international stabilization mission under the UN Security Council to protect Palestinians, oversee the transfer of administration to the Palestinian Authority, and monitor the ceasefire. So imagine that. So
Temporary International Stabilization Mission. All
that's right.
right.
Under the UN Security Council. That's good. It'll protect the Palestinians and transfer administration to the
It's
Palestinians.
interesting they will never say protect the Palestinians from the Israelis. They would
No,
never
that's right. That's right. It says that's right. And the text condemns the deadly 7th of October attack by Hamas, and there's and so on. It also condemns Israel's military offensive in Gaza, in which it killed more than 60,000 Palestinians. And then here's the co-chairs France and Saudi Arabia urged all 193 UN member states to support the document before the start of the 80th session of the UN General
So,
Assembly.
Tammy Bruce, will the United States be supporting this document?
Well, we'll come to that because the United States issued a document on this conference. Um, anyway, Reuters says kind of similar stuff. Saudi Arabia, France called on countries to support a declaration that outlines tangible, time-bound, and irreversible steps towards implementing a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. And then the 7-page declaration is a result of an international conference and so on. And then we call on you to support this document before the end of the 79th session of the General Assembly. This is the Saudi foreign minister said. And then again, this transition authority, international stabilization mission, and it calls on Israel's leadership to issue a public commitment to a two-state solution. Well, I mean, you can go on calling on Israel. Yeah, please commit to a two-state solution. Nah, not going to do it. Including a sovereign and viable Palestinian state. Nah. To immediately end violence and incitement against Palestinians and to halt all settlement, land grabs, and annexations activities in
But
the
George,
occupied Palestinian territory.
this was said decades ago.
Yep.
None of That's why I think this is a disingenuous, fundamentally immoral attempt at We tried. We tried. We have, look at the seven-page document.
Well, I know what you mean. I think there's more to it than that. I think that they're making a record. I mean, that here's
Yeah. Okay.
okay, but I don't think it's just a we tried. I mean, it's like the Saudi plan. Was it? I think whenever it was like I can't remember but the big Saudi plan.
2002.
Yeah,
2002.
2002, the big Saudi plan. Of course, it was never going to happen, but nonetheless, it's part of the historical record that there was a plan that was not an unreasonable land for peace for Israel. Israel turned it down. I mean, it's a record. You know, here we are. You know, you're saying we have no one to negotiate with. Well, what do you mean? Here was this peace plan. So Saudi Arabia presented this a land for peace deal, promised recognition. All Arab states would recognize the state of Israel, but Israel would have to withdraw from the occupied territories, and Israel said no. And so it's the same kind of thing here. You know, you're making a record, and this is after all France and Saudi Arabia that's co-chairing it. So it's not just oh well it's a Saudi plan. So you know this is France and Saudi Arabia. Um, uh, but it's not. Yeah, Israel is going to just flatly reject this. That's it. I mean, you know, as it's rejected all peace plans, really.
Well,
Going,
we all should remember it was only things were moving so quickly. Was when Netanyahu was on his third visit to the White House this year, and Trump was asked about the two-state solution, and what did he do? He just threw it over to Netanyahu.
yeah,
Wow.
he's the great expert. Ask him.
He's the great expert. Ask him. Yeah.
um, then it says the declaration commits to adopting restrictive measures against the violent extremist settlers and those who support illegal settlements,
Oh,
and,
right.
and adopting targeted measures against entities and individuals acting against the principles of a peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine. Um, and then it says, only by ending the war in Gaza, releasing all hostages, ending occupation, rejecting violence and terror, realizing an independent, sovereign, and democratic Palestinian state, ending the occupation of all Arab territories, and providing solid security guarantees for Israel and Palestine, can normal relations and coexistence among the region's peoples and states be achieved. I mean, what you said is absolutely right. You said that we've heard all this for decades. You know, I mean, you can go all the way back, go all the way back to the 1960s. You interview with Gamal Abdel Nasser. You know, that's not too different. What he was saying then was not too different from this.
You know, as much as I show frustration and exasperation in all of this, one has to. This attempt is not wrong-headed. How effective it'll be, I think, is obvious. But you know, George, if you can get the international community the way it's lining up, you know, France and Britain, it is important if they take this step. I agree. But you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is.
Right.
If there is a recognition of a Palestinian state, then the international community has an obligation to protect that sovereignty.
Right.
Okay, that's why Israel is terrified of this. Okay, because and also what you know, let's look at the aftermath of the First World War. All of these states in Eastern Europe were created in a pretty sloppy way because they all had minority problems, and it was one of the key issues that allowed Eastern Europe to be allowed the Nazis a very flexible and powerful way to deal with these individual countries during the 1930s. But you know what France and Britain did, the fundamental mistake about creating those states in Eastern Europe, which I'm not saying shouldn't have been created, but they gave them. It was basically, we recognize you, but we won't be able to help you. Okay. Right. That's the problem, you know. Oh, we love an idea of an independent Poland. Okay. But when push came to shove, they did nothing to help Poland. they sold out Czechoslovakia and
No,
it
they
went
didn't. No, they didn't really sell out
all right,
Czechoslovakia.
get,
All right. We don't have to get into that now. But yeah.
I think we're actually in
Right.
agreement. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Right.
my point is that the international community is going to, back the creation of a Palestinian state. You better be able to back up its existence and its sovereignty.
Right.
Okay, that's why these words are all very nice, but it's, if it were to come to fruition, it's not going to be easy because Israel is not going to
Right.
cooperate.
Right. No question. And okay, yeah. Here's the statement from the U.S. Department of State. United States rejects a two-state solution conference. Statement by Tammy Bruce. So this is a written statement by Tammy Bruce. This week, the UN will serve as host to an unproductive and ill-timed conference on the two-state solution in New York City. This is a
Do you think she has an opinion about it?
This is a publicity stunt. It's a publicity stunt. So I don't know, 193 states are
Yeah,
showing
yeah.
up. It's a publicity stunt. Foreign ministers level. This isn't just. I mean, see, you know what she's doing here? You say, oh, it's the United Nations, so you can condemn it. You say, okay, that's 193 member states who are showing up at foreign minister level. Oh, it's a publicity stunt. That comes in the middle of delicate diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. Oh,
There's no delicate diplomatic efforts.
well, which part do you disagree? Is it the delicate part or the diplomatic efforts part? I mean, it's like, or the middle part? Is it that we're in the middle of it? Or it's a delicate, and it's yeah. I love this. It's kind of news to everybody that there are delicate diplomatic efforts going on. Last time we heard, they walked away from, they just left Qatar and they just said, that's it. We're not going to talk anymore. I mean, so I didn't know there was delicate diplomatic efforts.
Yeah, afterward, I hope I get my chronology correct, but Steve Witkoff, I think it was after the delegation walked out, he was at some kind of gathering in which a former Mossad head was in the audience, and Witkoff made a special point of pointing out that his father, probably an ardent Zionist too, would be very proud that a former Mossad head was applauding his son, meaning Witkoff himself. What a bizarre.
Yeah, I
All
agree.
out in the open. All out in the open.
It's bizarre, almost as bizarre as that interview by Tammy Bruce with her eyes shining like a child. It was a bracelet being dangled in front of a child. She's being interviewed by an Israeli propagandist. And it says here that far from promoting peace, the conference will prolong the war, embolden Hamas, and reward its obstruction and undermine real world efforts to achieve peace.
I get the feeling this was written in Tel Aviv. I'm sorry, George.
Of course, it was. I mean, I'm absolutely convinced that it was. I mean, it's like, can you fax over a statement? Sure. Well, you don't you don't have fax
Yeah,
machine. Can you email
can
us?
you metaphorically fax me? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. As Secretary Rubio has made clear, this effort is a slap in the face of the victims of October the 7th. They're acting. This is the two-state solution. It's part of what agreed upon at Oslo. It's
Yeah. Well, yeah, let me just throw out an odd thought here. Maybe if there had been a two-state solution, October 7th wouldn't have happened. But anyway,
that's a shock horror. Yeah. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And a reward for terrorism. It keeps the hostages trapped in tunnels. The United States will not participate in this insult, but will continue to lead real-world efforts to end the fighting. Imagine that they're leading these real-world efforts to end the fighting and deliver a permanent peace. Our focus remains on serious diplomacy. Serious, in other words, no diplomacy whatsoever, but it's serious. Not stage managed conferences designed to manufacture the appearance of relevance. But you see, when she makes these statements and you say, that's 193 UN member states, and you said, oh, stage managed conference designed to manufacture the appearance of relevance.
Yeah, well,
We're going
remember,
to do serious diplomacy.
remember Biden's conference on
On democracy.
democracy versus autocracy.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's not stage managed. Yeah.
That's right. President Macron's announcement about recognizing a Palestinian state was welcomed by Hamas.
Oh,
This reflects,
I think the Palestinians were. I think it's more important. Look, everyone, from everything I can tell, Hamas doesn't want to be ruling Gaza anymore,
right,
okay? And
yeah,
they reluctantly got involved in the political process. I'm
right,
sure they really regret it now, okay?
right,
But there's no indication that they want that. They again, Putin wanted Trump to win, okay? I mean, they're attributing intentionality where it's pretty scant,
right.
okay? I
The
mean, they
problem,
are there.
that's
I
right.
mean, the Israeli government helped them thrive
Yes.
in Gaza.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Um, and this reflects a pattern of counterproductive gestures that only emboldens Hamas, encourages its obstruction of a ceasefire, and greatly undercuts our diplomatic efforts. That's, is it the fourth time you've talked about our diplomatic efforts to end the suffering in Gaza, free the hostages, and move the whole Middle East towards a brighter and more prosperous future. Um, so that it's just so ridiculous, these kinds of statements. Now, I guess the question that does arise now that essentially the Trump administration has completely identified itself with Netanyahu is what happens now, because this is not going down well. This is not going down well in the United States. It's not going down well among Republicans. Marjorie Taylor Greene sent out a tweet referring to what's going on in Gaza as genocide. She said that. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she has support. She's a rising star within the Republican Party and within the MAGA movement. Um, Trump is kind of looking like a figure from the past. He's like, elderly people, sort of these sort of very elderly kind of fanatics, younger Republicans, younger MAGA supporters aren't buying into what they might have bought into 25, 30 years ago. They're not buying into this anymore.
Absolutely. George, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe it's a bit premature, but Marjorie Taylor Greene, she can make a bid
I think so
to
too. I agree.
capture the MAGA movement. She's unbelievably popular with them. Okay,
Right.
and given her early missteps as a congresswoman, I think it's fair to say that, okay?
Right.
She has matured
Right.
very, very quickly,
Right.
and she's on point. She's on point so many times.
Right.
No, there's plenty of things I can disagree with her on, but I'm talking about one of the things I always stress here, her leadership quality. She has a leadership quality that almost is unmatched by,
Yeah.
I mean, if you take Trump and Vance out of the mix, she she
I,
comes to my mind.
I think so too, and I think it could be that Vance, who seemed to, oh, he has the inside track for 2028. I'm not at all sure,
I'm not
because
sure.
on this issue and of course on Iran, both issues, Marjorie Taylor Greene took the opposite position, and that is going to count when the campaign begins. That's going to count for her. That, hey, I was against the going to war with Iran, and this we should have nothing to do with what she would call the genocide in Gaza. And Vance is going to kind of hem and haw, yeah, blah, 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 and he's not going to have a good answer as to why he went along with all of this.
Yeah, because Vance is not going to be able to break with Trump.
No, he's
It's
not. No,
impossible.
yeah,
Rubio will. If he agrees or disagrees with Trump, he's going to break with
yeah,
him. Okay, that just obviously that's in as Nancy Pelosi would say, you can take that to the bank, okay? But Marjorie Taylor Greene, she is cultivating a very strong following. Not because she's a great person, not because she's particularly intelligent. She said she's listening to the base.
Right.
Nobody else is,
Yeah.
and she knows what to say. George is absolutely right on this. Trump seems so distant,
Right. Right.
uninformed,
Yeah.
uninterested.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a deal. I'm going to get a win, and nobody's grateful.
That's right. That's right.
It's
Yeah.
around and around and around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And none of it is coming to fruition.
No.
None of it.
No.
Not on Ukraine, not on Iran, not on Gaza, Israel.
No.
I mean, none of it. He has no traction on
That's
any of these issues.
right. No, that's right. And he is
And George, these are issues he could have just like taken off of his desk. Just like,
Right, yeah,
I don't
exactly.
want to deal with it. He could have, would have he taken a lot of arrows for it? Yeah, but he would be worshipped by
Right.
the MAGA movement. He did what he said. But no, he's kept these files on his desk and they're just accumulating
Right.
with no end in sight, no strategy.
No.
When there's no strategy, it will only get worse.
Exactly. And what he's doing, this completely flat out identification with Israel and with Netanyahu. He does this we thing. You can notice whenever he's talking about Israel and Netanyahu, he keeps slipping into this we. We are going to do this. We are doing what's this we thing? Um, it really does harken back to a kind of a, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago. It's he's not reading the room. That's absolutely not where younger Americans are. It's not where younger Republicans are. It's not where MAGA is. And I think he's just gradually moving towards a kind of irrelevance. I mean, it's like this is just no one's no one's buying into any of this.
Again, you even got the chronology right because growing up, I remember the 67 war, but I particularly remember the 73 war and how Israel was glorified.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, this is the way we used to be.
Yeah.
We were the upstart country and
Yeah.
we had to break free of colonial rule and the Europeans were meddling in our affairs and we had the frontier, meaning we had to commit genocide against the indigenous people. But the whole American story, the American myth was transplanted to this upstart pluck country, the Israelis. They suffered the Holocaust, and now it's the Leon Uris
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
themes, okay? And Trump seems to be stuck in that.
He's stuck in that mode. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a very, very, very strange to do that because subsequent presidents had made some attempt to move away from that. Nixon did, Bill Clinton did, even George W. Bush did, and yet it's just exactly it's gone back into that. Yeah, it's sort of forever 1967. It's forever, Leon Uris, writing Exodus, and the plucky Israel has to be rescued in the 1973 war, and so, but now, particularly after the last now almost 2 years, it has to come along like this, and just ridicule and reject these fairly timid, tepid steps taken by Macron and Starmer, and and then this conference at the UN, and you treat it all with such utter contempt. Why? Because Israel doesn't like it. That really is it's just
Yeah, but see, George, this, even though in the Western media and the Western news wire services didn't give a lot of attention to this UN conference, I can bet you my bottom dollar that the rest of the world, it's front page news. All through Central Latin and Central America, obviously in Arab capitals, all through Indonesia,
right, right.
there's a lot of people that are saying, look, I mean, there are people that are tired of actually working on a solution. But the American public isn't going to be made aware of that at
Yeah.
all. And the European leaders are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
Okay. As George and I have pointed out, uncontrolled immigration. And now you have a Arab Muslim constituency that you have to deal
Yep.
with. Okay. And they brought their attitudes about Israel with them. Okay. And we've seen this in France, and we've seen this in the UK. I mean, that's why Stallmer, I mean, he can't get anything right.
Right.
Anything.
Right. Right.
This guy is a walking wreck.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, that's yeah, that's right. But when you reach this point of isolation, from the rest of the world, but you're getting isolated at home as well. You're not even, you don't even have the public behind you. Then it's a real problem because now you have an administration not terribly popular at home and declaring, oh, our best friend in the world is the Netanyahu government. That's not a good place to be.
I'd wonder when you showed that we're doing the Tammy Bruce Chronicles now. But had that Gallup poll had come out, I wonder anybody in the audience had asked, I mean, your administration is underwater on this issue. I mean, do you take that into account? I wonder what Tammy Bruce would say to something like that. Okay,
The
it would take an
gibberish.
in-depth. Well, it would be gibberish,
Yes.
okay? But on every, I mean, I would like to do a control with her. I would say, Tammy, how would you describe today's weather?
Yes.
Okay, have some control questions,
Good.
and then can ask her a real question to see if it's the same level of garble.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's right. So I think that this isolation from the United States and Israel, it's not doing the United States any good at all. I mean, it really is sort of you know it's putting the reputation of the United States in a way into a state, to a level that's never really been at. Even at the low points, of the United States, it hadn't really identified itself with such barbarity and for such a long time. I mean, you can remember, low points again in Vietnam, but you see, even during Vietnam, there were all sorts of positives. People looked to the United States. It was the moon. They sent a man on the moon.
And the Cold War was serious
In the
business.
Cold War, they were kind of the leaders of the West. Even at the time of the wars in Central America, which were very nasty. But you still had Reagan, and Reagan would deliver his magnificent speech at the House of Commons, and the famous, we're going to throw communism on the ash heap of history. And so there were these positives, but this identifying yourself with this and doing it proudly, rather than making any attempt, well, we need to bring this to an end as quickly as possible because this is really damaging us. But instead, being kind of happy with this, just satisfied. So asking
Well,
Bibi, "Are you satisfied?" "Yeah, I'm satisfied." "Okay, well,
I wrote it down, but basically, Trump, paraphrasing here, Trump said in Scotland that Israel has to make a decision.
right,
He
yes,
left it.
that's right.
He
Yeah,
left
whatever
it.
whatever you mean by that. Yeah, yeah,
What do you mean by that? Has to make a decision.
yeah.
It doesn't sound good to
It
me.
doesn't sound good.
Sounds ominous to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, again, there's this parallel realities going on. Watching this administration, it's an exercise in pointing out what they don't know, what they want to ignore,
Right.
and what they will regret.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. And this hand-wringing, sorry, it's too late. It's
Yeah.
too late.
Yeah.
The internet remembers everything, everything. All right, everybody. That's our kind of a mixture there of British politics, American politics, and the idiocy of Tammy Bruce all in one video. Where else can you get that? Huh? Where else?
Tammy Bruce is becoming the new Josep Borrell. We
Yeah, I
used
mean,
to have
but
fun.
again, who would have thought that Joseph Borrell was the intellectual of the two? It just What's her name? Jean-Pierre, I'm history.
Oh,
You know,
what's her name?
I never could remember her
Yeah,
name. I don't know.
yeah, that's
Oh,
Jean.
did you heard what happened to what's his name? Chris Smalls? Small, the labor union guy, Amazon. He was on that flotilla, and he was on Jimmy Dore and a number of things. He was really he was inarticulate. No, I thought he was a very articulate guy for labor, and he was on that recent flotilla that was like intercepted by the Israelis. He was severely beaten up in Israel. He was the only person, and he's black.
Yeah.
You know, and not a beep from the He's an American citizen.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, that just suddenly came to mind. Sorry.
Corinne Jean-Pierre, that was the
There
name.
you go. I gave George time to remember
Yeah,
the name.
exactly. Corinne Jean-Pierre. Yeah.
All right. This train it's at high speed. I have no idea what direction it is, but it's not a good direction.
Not a good
Okay.
direction. Not
And
a,
and, and all of these things, there's no progress in resolution. I just see escalation, escalation,
yeah,
escalation. That's all I see.
yeah, exactly. The very
Is
opposite.
this what you voted for?
Exactly. The
Is
very
this what
opposite
you
of what.
voted
Yeah,
for?
that's right. That's right. Exactly. It's the exact opposite of the Trumpian platform. The absolute opposite. And he was saying, "Yeah, I'm going to bring these wars to an end. These wars make no sense. They're bad for America. They have nothing to do with any American interests." And he's doing exact opposite of that. So, and damaging the reputation permanently of the United States. That's not good leadership.
It's no way to run a
Right.
railroad, as we used
Right.
to say. All right, everybody, this is the Goggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegoggle.locals.com. Yeah, buddy can hear that.
Yeah,
See?
yeah.
There you go. This is Wednesday. George will be doing a solo tomorrow, and we will regroup on Friday. And I had a minor eye surgery. It was very good today. I'm in good shape. And George and I will have our Monday live stream
That's
as
right.
usual.
And on Friday, we've got some rather interesting guests.
Oh, we got some good stuff on Friday.
That's
Good stuff.
exactly. Right. So please, join me tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And in the meantime, look at these dogs. The dogs are sort of staring. They've got their eyes focused on the tip jar. And they're saying there's a real crisis. The tip jar situation. They want the United Nations to address the
Look
tip
at that
jar
tail.
crisis.
Look at that tail.
Yeah, exactly. The tip jar. Yeah, exactly. So if you have anything at all, just the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel into that tip jar. Nothing short of that is going to satisfy them. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, you got to keep these dogs quiet. I mean, the UN General Assembly is coming up soon, and all hell breaks loose when that happens. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.